Hey guys, Coach Tim, Spider Cave Studios, Torrance, California, in the man cave. Yeah. So on my, let's see, these things get twisted. Which way is which? Okay, that right there is that little helmet right there is from my senior year in high school. I think we had to go around selling those posters to pay for some of our stuff. I think we had to raise like $50 compared to kids nowadays. I know are raising somewhere between, I think our school, they're responsible for about $500 if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little less, but it ends up being more. And the other schools, I mean, I know of some that are upwards of $1,000. So anyway, the one on the right there is my senior year in college. And so anyway, it's kind of cool. And then the frame right above my head is my daughter, a letter from the state. My daughter got I think it was in seventh grade or sixth grade, got the highest score possible in biology. So I put that up there. Um, so today I wanted to talk to you about the power of story. We all know story is important. I hope we do. But I want you to get that everything is story. Everything's a narrative. It's why we sometimes get frustrated with politics because there's a narrative that's being inserted into the culture that we may like or we may not like depending on our tendencies to go one way or the other. Uh, so the other day, I gave another story. A lot of my kids will, in fact, hey, coach, when's it story time? And I joke about this with them. It's 6:30 in the morning, so forgive me if I'm hitting the coffee, okay, in front of you. Uh, so I like to share things with them. Like one of the things recently I shared with them was the flea, the trapped flea. Don't be a flea. Well, what is that? A The trap flea syndrome is if you take a jar and you put a flea in it and roll and put the top on the jar, the flea will jump out to get free, but will hit the top of the jar and will stop. As the story goes, the this was told to a child, I think in India, and who ended up being one of the uh, well, first of all, was uneducated and educated himself and taught invented some sort of I don't even know the word because I can't some sort of big deal in I think biology. And he says this story told to him by his dad changed his life. And so the story is if you take the lid off, the flea won't get free. He'll only go to the top of where the lid was prior before. But he could jump out. He's free. He's no longer. So think of that metaphor in your own life or people that you know's life, right? And it's a similar situation with elephants. An elephant, they put a giant chain on this little Dumbo at an early age, and then they it's a giant chain, big old steel pole, and as Dumbo grows to be tons and tons and tons of ferocious, not ferocious, are elephants ferocious? I don't think they are, but a big animal that could pull a lot of weight, and they have him usually a lot of times tied with a very small chain and a very smaller pole. Now I've heard this in other ways. I read a book recently by Joe Vitale that he's talking about his dog, where his dog always had a short leash, but he deserved to have a longer leash, and he goes through great detail to wax poetically on why his dog deserves a longer leash. So he gave him a longer leash. Dog wouldn't go the full amount. He was trained to go the original mountain that he grew up with. And so, lesson of the story, don't be a flea. Our thinking can cause us to limit ourselves, right? We know this academically, but how often do we actually deep dive into our limitations, self-imposed limitations? An example I love to give is my growing up. I went to St. Bernard, the yellow helmet on the left with the football field in the middle, uh, and over in Plato Ray, which is by LAX. If you've ever flown out of LAX and looked north and you saw high school, you saw probably St. Bernard or Westchester High or both right next to each other. And so there's this fella named Al Smith on the team. Al, his freshman year, and I coach freshmen, so it's a perfect story. And my offensive coordinator was my head coach then, so he knows the story vividly like I do. We were playing Rolling Hills High School, and Al Smith, I think, was a tight end, and I was an offensive tackle, so he played like right next to me. And next thing you know, he's laying on the ground, wincing in pain. He had broke his leg, I think his femur, if I'm not mistaken. It was pretty bad. He was in a cast for months. And his older brother was quite a ball player, much taller, much more, shall we say, athletic looking, appearing than Al, in my opinion. Al was hardly taller than me, uh, uh, bigger structurally, I think, than me. His brother worked at a place in LA called Jack LaLanne's. If you're old enough to remember Jack LaLanne on TV, he had his own franchise or series of different weight workout places with his name on it. And Al's brother Aaron worked at one over by the airport, LAX. And so uh, I believe Al got a job there or had access there or what, but spring comes and Al's just getting his legs free, and the workout shirts go on, and Al's only a freshman, but he's huge. He's huge. So going into sophomore year, uh, Al's lifting more and more and more, and I think it was either late sophomore year or junior year. He's lifting. Now, mind you, this is like what, 15 or 16, maybe years old. He's doing bench press, which is this, laying down and doing this, 315 pounds for reps. Not just once, but several times. Um, many people never even get there in their whole lives. Well, he had put the work in. He fell in love with the weights, and here's the big thing. Somewhere in that period, sophomore or junior year, we're lifting, and he's spotting me, and I'm lifting significantly less than he is. And he says, "Come on, Timmy, do it for a college scholarship." And that resonated. I'm like, "Yeah, college scholarship." Because that's what I wanted. That was my goal since I was in the fourth grade. Wanted to play college ball. So I'm like, okay, I kind of get this game. And so he's lifting, and I'm like, "Come on, Al, do it for a Scully." Yeah. So now it's my turn again. So I'm back on the bench and I'm lifting. He goes, "Come on, Timmy, do it for the NFL." And I'm like, NFL? All right. I guess, what didn't resonate with me. That wasn't my goal. I turned around and I said it to him, come on, for the pros, for the pros, for the pros. And long story short, it's never easy, which is the point. It's never easy. And if you don't have the goal, and a real goal, a real compulsion for that goal, you probably aren't going to get it because it ain't going to just be handed to you. My story goes is I went on to be a blue chip athlete and got every award that possibly a senior in high school can get and got crickets from colleges, like hardly any attention whatsoever. Um, Al, same story, except he didn't get all the awards. He didn't get all the stuff all over town like I did, newspapers and stuff. And so I ended up going to El Camino Junior College. And as my story goes, I ended up thinking I should play linebacker because I had a higher chance of getting recruited. After all those awards as a lineman, nobody came. So maybe as a linebacker, I would get more attention from scouts. That was my 19-year-old thinking, or whatever age I was. So I'm going through summer at El Camino Junior College, which is where football players go to die, or they have a last chance. And as it were, I played with from that college team. One level up or one level down. There were 7 guys that went to the NFL off of that those squads. So pretty impressive place. But they call it Last Chance U on Netflix for a reason. It's your last chance. You don't make it here, you're not going to make it. So I'm at linebacker and I'm starting. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm starting. And Coach Riley, who probably one of the most innovative and smartest offensive coordinator you've never heard of. He was the head coach, and he calls me into his office. He says, "Hey, we got injuries. I need you to go to the O line." And I'm, "Coach, I'll never get recruited on the O line." "Yeah, you will." He tried to sell me on the whole thing. You know, I'm the perfect small little compact guy they want. O line is like I'm 6'1" on a good day. O line is like 6'4", 6'3" is a midget, 6'5", 270, 300 back in those days. Now it goes higher than that in weight. And I'm like, I won't get recruited, right? He goes, "Well, if we have another injury, I need you." I'm like, "All right, I'll take it for the team." Sure enough, another injury, calls me over. The good news is that I was coached by probably one of the most technically sound coaches that I've ever had, where he taught me how to use my body for leverage. Gene Engel, and I still talk with him to this day. Was a phenomenal coach, and he made it better. And in hindsight, it was a great lesson because of the tenaciousness of testing me if I really want to play college football. Because I didn't want to play on the offensive line. I like chasing people, right? I like tackling people. Um, so, I mean, I still enjoyed it. Football's football. And it helped that we were a national, passing record breaking team. Um, but nevertheless, I was heartbroken because I thought my dreams that I've had since the 4th grade was going to go away. Last game comes, and I go to coach and I say, "Coach, I'm sorry, the last game comes and goes." And that Monday morning, I'm on Coach Riley's office. Knock, knock. Hey, can we talk now about me going back to defense? He's like, "What?" I go, "Yeah, I took it for the team. Can I go back to defense? And he goes, well, we're full of linebackers because we had what's called washouts, guys that come from 4-year universities that come late in the season, late in the summer and in the camp preseason stuff. They wash out of the 4-year university, and then you end up having those guys on the team also. And I said, no, I know we're stacked at linebacker, but rolling left at nose guard. Uh, we don't have any nose guards. We barely have any D linemen at all. And you could see the wheels spinning in his head. He's like, wow, that's not a bad idea. And so I went to nose guard and had a hell of a season my sophomore year. Got recruited by a lot of local teams, which was tempting because I'm a homeboy. I've other than college, I've been in the South Bay my whole life. I am from here, and so being close to home would have been a big deal. But I went to Pacific, which was more of a traditional looking Ivy League almost looking school. In fact, it was modeled after Princeton. I think it was called back in the day. It was the first chartered university in the state of California. At the time, the smallest Division I school in the country. I don't know what it is now. And they had a football. Amos Alonzo Stagg coached there. The stadium was named after him. Pete Carroll, a slew of names have been through that field, those locker rooms. So I fell in love with the place. So I went, and when it was 2 years was gone of football, I was done with football. It was hard. It was a hard withdrawal process, but I was done. I had to come to that big boy decision at 21 or 22 years old, and it was over. Now let's go back to Al. Al at the time out of high school went to Cal Poly Pomona. They dropped football after 1 year. That was led by ex-Rams quarterback Roman Gabriel. He was the head coach. The school dropped football, which would be the beginning of many schools in California dropping football, including mine in '95. Um, so Al went to uh, Utah State. I tried to get him to go to El Camino, but instead, after Pomona dropped, he went to Utah State, redshirted, which means he took a year off, but he doesn't lose eligibility for a year. Um, but when you transfer, I think even then, even if the school dropped, you still had the red shirt. Had an okay junior year when he played, but his senior year, he had a standout year. Was defensive player of the year, and he still kept lifting weights. Dude was jacked. I mean, 6 packs upon 6 packs, right? He was benching just monstrous weight, muscle on muscle, and gets drafted by the Houston Oilers 6th round. As I said, his older brother I always thought looked and appeared more athletic. And he had played at Utah State, which is why Al went there. And he went to the Denver Broncos, and I think he played for a year or two. Al went to the Oilers, drafted in the 6th round, which basically means you're a blocking dummy. And after the end of the summer, you get a few shekels and have a nice life. He made the team, and he was ferocious. He played 11 years and 2 Pro Bowls. That means he was an all-star. And he was always on the all NFL strength team. He just kept working out and living that work ethic. Should have never been there. 6th round pick. His college quit, but he said in junior or sophomore year in high school, come on, NFL. He had a bigger outcome, a bigger compulsion, and he shouldn't have been able to go. Everything on earth told him he shouldn't go. He had a lid or a chain on him saying he should not go to the NFL. He not only went, he went for 11 years. I'll give you another story that I shared with the kids. So, as a coach in youth football, I run into an old teammate of mine from El Camino, Joe Caravello. Joe Caravello in at El Camino was he looked like Conan the Barbarian. He looked like a shorter Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, you see these bodybuilders with necks that go like this from here. That was Joe. Big, you know, chest that you could, put your finger in the cleavage and get lost in the muscle. I mean, it was just ridiculously jacked. And he was a fullback and played on that national record breaking team, and then played. He was a sophomore with me, and he got recruited by Tulane University, and so they turned him into a nose guard. They moved him from fullback to nose guard. He played 2 years as a nose guard on defense. He'd always been an offensive type guy. So, is the dream over? Apparently not. His dad, who's a lawyer, got him to, or on his request, helped him walk on, not even drafted, walk on to the Atlanta Falcons. At which point he was scraping the team. He was literally a blocking dummy kind of guy, still nose guard, but he he's a football player. He's still a kid, so he's out there in pre-practice doing all this stuff with the balls like receivers do, or quarterbacks, spinning it and doing all this stuff, and he's running routes with the receivers and playing catch before practice, and the coaches are like, what are you doing? You're pretty good at this. You're in, run a few routes again. And he's running these perfect, receiver routes. And they're like, how do you know this? And he goes, well, I played at El Camino. I played at El Segundo. I mean, that's all we do is pass. And so they moved him to what was to be known. It was kind of a fullback position, but it was, back then I think it was an H-back is what they put him at, which was like a guy who kind of lined up behind the tight end, if you know what that stuff is, and kind of roves back and forth on the line, depending on the team. And he ends up getting traded to the Washington Redskins and wins a Super Bowl ring. And then gets moved to San Diego, the Chargers. And I think they either won a ring or I can't remember if they lost or won, but I think he might have another Super Bowl ring. And that's just a cool story. That's just a really cool story to me, because he shouldn't have made it either. Had no business. Could have easily said, I'm the flea, or I'm the elephant, because he he might have been bigger than an elephant. uh, so that is the story. And so what I'm telling this to you for is not only for the motivational piece of it, which I hope was motivational for you, but also that these stories are what locks us in as listeners, and it's really hard to walk away from, because you want to find out what happens. And the only way to start getting good at telling stories is by telling stories. And why a lot of times people say, oh, you should go to Toastmasters to learn how to give speeches. Well, that's probably not a bad idea. My Toastmasters are my football teams. And I'm constantly trying to find ways to get into their heads psychologically. Why persuasion is so important. And so what I want to impart onto you is figure out how to tell your story. What is your story? How did you get here? My story from my business, very short, because I know I've had you on now, is I'd gone through a divorce. I was in real estate. The market tanked in the early 90s. I went through a divorce and I was looking for a reboot. And it's, not only that, but a series of other adversities. And I was looking for a reboot. You know, I was getting remarried. I was looking for a way to do something that I knew was mine, because I had been at the mercy between my real estate career and other things that I've put myself into. I'd been at the mercy of other people and their designs for their business, whereas this is my designs on my business. As a friend of mine reminded me about a year ago, we hadn't talked in years, and he's the guy who put me into this business. He says, I'm so impressed. You know, you've been doing this for almost 20 years. And, you know, I remember what you told me when you started this. He said that you know, that it comes down to you, that you are the reason that the business works, the service works for the clients, or it doesn't work. The buck stops with you, and you embrace that. And so that's the benefit of working with Spider Juice Technologies, is just a hard-headed desire to win. And what I mean by that is a hard-headed desire to beat Google, to beat the search algorithms. And just like I'm that way when I coach or when I played, this bullheaded attitude is intellectual, right? It's not, you know, playing a football game. It's intellectual, and it's about going against Google and knowing how to beat Google. And so that's what my clients get from working with us. So, hey, I have gone a while, and I appreciate you sticking with me. And if you've stuck with me this long, you realize why stories work. Tell stories, guys, and don't be a flea.